Billionaire Robert Wilson's twins had failed every test again, and nobody knew why. The teachers blamed the boys. The school blamed the boys. Even Robert, in his quiet pain, began to fear that maybe something was truly wrong with his children. But the night he raised his voice at them in the dining room, something happened that none of them saw coming. 8-year-old Ethan covered his face with his small hands. Nathan grabbed his twin's arm under the table, holding on like he was drowning. Both boys sat there, shaking in silence, too scared to speak, too tired to explain what they did not understand. Their mother, Vanessa, had always told Robert, "They are special. They see the world in their own way." But she was gone now, and the house felt empty, cold, and heavy with sadness. Robert walked away from the table, his footsteps loud in the quiet house. He did not notice the way Ethan's tears fell without sound. He did not see Nathan biting his lips so hard it almost bled. And he also did not see the woman standing in the hallway, frozen. Sophie, the new maid. She held a basket of folded clothes, but her hands were shaking so badly the clothes almost fell. She had heard everything, not the anger, but the silence after. The silence of two boys who believed they were broken, a silence that sounded exactly like the one she grew up with. Sophie pressed her back to the wall, breathing softly, afraid to move. She had lived that pain. She had lived with teachers who gave up on her. She had lived with people who said she was slow, useless, not good enough. She knew the shame of sitting in class and watching letters move around like they did not want her to read them. And now, in this big Texas mansion, she heard the same pain in two little boys. Inside that dining room, she saw something that made her heart twist. Ethan wiping his face with his sleeve. Nathan gripping his twin's hand so hard his knuckles turned pale. Both boys sitting in fear of a world that did not understand them. Right there, in that moment, something deep woke up inside Sophie. Something she had buried for years. Something she had promised herself she would never feel again. But the pain in those boys' faces pulled her in like a strong wind. She whispered to herself, almost like a small prayer, "God, why did you bring me here?" Then she felt it, a small, soft voice inside her heart, a voice she had not heard in many years. "This is why you are here, not to clean, not to wash, not to fold clothes, but to see what everyone else has missed." Sophie stood there, the basket shaking in her hands, tears burning in her eyes. She did not know it yet, but what she had just witnessed would change everything in the Wilson house. It would change Ethan and Nathan's lives. It would break Robert's heart open. It would bring back a dream Vanessa had carried before she died. And it would pull Sophie into a storm she never expected. Because soon, Robert Wilson would walk into a room and see something that would leave him speechless. Something he never imagined a maid could do. Something that would show him the truth about his sons, and the truth about himself. The Wilson house was no longer quiet. Something had begun. And nothing would ever be the same again. Ethan and Nathan sat at the long dining table that morning, their bodies close, as if the world felt safer when they touched. Steam rose from their plates, but neither child lifted a fork. The sun shone through the big windows of the Texas mansion, but even the light felt sad inside that room. Robert Wilson stood beside the window with his hand on the glass. He looked like a man carrying something heavy inside. He held the boys' school reports in the other hand, papers filled with red marks, and the same painful word over and over. Failed. He did not shout. He did not blame. He only looked tired, confused, and scared in a way he did not want the boys to see. "Ethan," he said softly, "come on. Please help me understand. Why is every test like this?" Ethan looked down at his plate. His small nose turned red, and he rubbed it with his hand. "I tried, Dad," he whispered. "I tried a lot." Nathan nodded beside him. "Me too. We tried. We really did. Robert sat slowly, the chair making a low sound. He placed the papers on the table with gentle hands, like they might break if he pushed too hard. Did you understand the questions? Do the letters bother you? Talk to me. But the boys stayed quiet. Not because they did not want to speak, but because every word felt like it would make things worse. Across the room, Sophie, the new maid, stood with a cloth in her hand. She was wiping the kitchen counter, but had not moved for almost a full minute. The boy's silence hit her like a deep cut. She had heard silence like that before. She had lived inside that silence. She watched Ethan pick at the skin on his thumb. She watched Nathan keep swallowing hard like he was drowning inside himself. She watched both boys avoid their father's eyes, as if they were ashamed of being seen. A memory rose inside Sophie, one she never wanted to feel again. She was 10 years old, sitting in a classroom with letters jumping on the page, making fun of her. A teacher standing over her saying, "Are you even trying?" Kids laughing behind her. Her mother telling her she just needed to focus. But she had been focusing. It simply never helped. Now she saw the same pain sitting quietly at the Wilson dining table. Robert leaned forward, his voice low and fragile. "Boys, your mom always believed you could do anything. She saw something special in you. She said you understood the world in your own way." The boys froze. Vanessa's name always made the air feel heavy. Nathan blinked fast, trying to push tears away. Ethan stared at the table so hard his eyes hurt. Sophie took a step toward them without thinking, then stopped. She was just the maid. She was supposed to clean, not speak, not get involved. But the look in those boys' faces made her chest tighten. Robert rubbed his forehead. "Please talk to me. I feel like I'm losing you both, and I don't know how to help." Nathan whispered. "The letters move sometimes." Ethan nodded. "And when I sit still, my head feels noisy." Robert frowned. These words made no sense to him, but to Sophie, they made perfect sense. Her hand began shaking around the cloth, and she slowly placed it on the counter. Her heart beat slowly, painfully, like someone tightening a rope around it. She understood. She understood in a way only someone who had lived through the same storm could understand. Robert stood up suddenly, the chair sliding slightly behind him. He walked to the door, stopped for a second as if trying to breathe, then said quietly, "I need time to think." He left the room without looking back. The door clicked shut, and the silence that followed felt sharp. A tear rolled down Ethan's cheek. He wiped it quickly like he did not want anyone to see. Nathan leaned close to him. "It's okay," he whispered, but his voice trembled. Sophie could not look away. She moved slowly toward the dining room, her feet almost unsure if they should carry her forward. "Ethan," she said in a gentle voice. "Nathan." Both boys lifted their heads with tired, scared eyes. Sophie knelt beside them. Not too close, not too far. Just close enough for them to feel she was there. "I heard what you said," she whispered, "about the letters and your head feeling noisy." The twins watched her carefully, waiting for her to laugh at them, or scold them, or tell them they were wrong. But Sophie's voice stayed soft. "I know what that feels like," she said. "I lived that life. I know what it does to your heart." Ethan blinked fast. You do?" Sophie nodded slowly. "I could not read when I was your age. I thought something was wrong with me. I thought I was broken." Nathan whispered, "Us too." Sophie's chest tightened. She swallowed hard. "You are not broken," she said firmly. "Not even close." The boys stared at her, unsure if they believed her. Sophie wiped a tear from Ethan's cheek with her thumb. "Your brain is not bad. It is only different, and different is not a mistake." Nathan's lip trembled. "But Dad thinks we don't try." "He is scared," Sophie said. "He lost your mom. He feels alone. And when people are hurting, they sometimes look in the wrong place for answers." She hesitated, breathing slowly. but I see something in both of you. Something strong. Something that has not been taught the right way yet. Ethan whispered, Then why can't we learn? Sophie touched the table lightly with her fingertips. Maybe. Nobody showed you how your brain wants to learn. For a moment, none of them moved. The room felt warmer now, like someone lit a small light inside a dark place. Nathan looked at Sophie with wide, honest fear. Are we stupid? Sophie's voice broke as she answered. No. You are amazing. You just learn in a way most teachers don't understand yet. Ethan's shoulders relaxed a little, as if for the first time that day he could breathe. Nathan leaned closer. Can you help us? Sophie hesitated. She was the maid. She cleaned floors, folded clothes, washed dishes. She had never been trusted with something as precious as two broken boys. But when she saw their eyes, she felt something pull deep inside her chest. Something she could not ignore. Something that whispered again, This is why you are here. Sophie took a slow breath. I will try, she said. If you want me to. Both boys nodded quickly, almost too quickly, as if afraid she might change her mind. And in that moment, Sophie felt the weight of their hope, small but heavy, settle inside her heart. It scared her, but she did not step back. Not this time. She reached for their hands slowly, gently, and both boys placed their small hands in hers. A soft promise formed between them. A promise that would change all their lives. The house felt different the next afternoon. Softer, quieter, like it was holding its breath. Sophie stood in the doorway of the sunroom, her hands shaking a little as she carried a small bag she had filled with things from the kitchen. She had baking sheets, a can of shaving cream, food coloring packets, and 2 pieces of colored plastic she had kept for years. She almost turned back twice. Her heart felt heavy with fear. What if she was wrong? What if she hurt the boys more than helped them? What if Robert found out and fired her on the spot? But then she looked at Ethan and Nathan, sitting on the old couch with their knees pulled up to their chests. Their heads touched, their fingers tangled together. They looked like 2 boys waiting for the world to give up on them again. And Sophie could not walk away. She forced a smile and stepped inside the room. Ready? She asked softly. The twins looked at each other, then nodded. Sophie set the bag down on the coffee table and took out a green overlay sheet. The thin colored plastic shook in her hand. She had carried it for years, always hoping she might one day help someone else the way someone once helped her. Ethan, she said, try reading this sentence. She slid a small book toward him. Ethan stared at the page as if it might bite. His lips trembled. He took a breath and tried to read. The word refused to stay still. His shoulders drooped. Sophie placed the green sheet gently on top of the words. Now try. Ethan blinked, surprised. The letters stopped moving so much. They looked calmer, clearer, less scary. He touched the green sheet with his finger. It looks different. Read slowly, Sophie whispered. Ethan leaned in. His voice shook at first, so quiet Sophie had to lean forward to hear him. The cat sat on the mat. He stopped, eyes wide, mouth parted like he did not believe his own voice. Nathan gasped softly. You read it. Ethan looked at Sophie. I did. Yes, baby, she whispered. You did. Ethan pressed the green sheet to his chest as if it were a treasure. Sophie's throat tightened. Tears touched her lashes, but she blinked them away. Me next? Nathan asked, almost scared to hope. Sophie took out a blue overlay and handed it to him. This color helps some people. It might help you. Nathan held the blue sheet carefully, like it was something fragile. He placed it over his book. The letters became less confusing, less noisy. He began to read. Not fast, not perfect, but steady. By the 3rd sentence, Sophie felt something warm spread through the room. A soft joy, small but alive. Nathan lowered the book, his face glowing. Why didn't anyone show us this before? Sophie knelt beside him. Because nobody saw what I saw. The boys leaned into her, their small bodies heavy with relief. Sophie wrapped her arms around them, holding that moment tight. She wanted to stay like that forever, but she knew this was only the beginning. She stood and opened the bag. Okay, she said lightly, who wants to make a mess? The boys' eyes lit up. Sophie covered the baking sheets with shaving cream. The white foam rose like snow. She spread it smooth and gave each boy a chance to touch it. Write a letter, she said. Any letter. Ethan traced a shaky C. Nathan made an M. Then they giggled as the cream stuck to their fingers. It feels like drawing, Ethan said. Your brain learns better this way, Sophie replied. Your hands talk to your mind. The boys kept writing dog, mom, son, cat, simple words, but each one came with a spark in their eyes. Sophie watched them, her heart swelling. She remembered sitting in her own literacy class years ago, tracing words the same way, learning slowly, painfully, but learning. Can we do more? Nathan asked breathlessly. Yes, Sophie said. We can do as much as you want. They spent almost an hour doing different activities. Nathan paced around the coffee table while reading aloud from a children's book. Sophie told him his brain needed movement. He looked relieved, like someone finally understood him. Ethan sat with the overlays, reading small sentences again and again, shocked each time the letters stayed still. For the first time in their lives, the boys were learning without fear. Outside the sunroom, the housekeepers paused as they passed by. They whispered in corners. She should stop. She's just the maid. She doesn't know what she's doing. What will Mr. Wilson say? Sophie heard them. Every word pierced her heart, but she kept going. She did not stop because the twins did not want her to stop. And she could not walk away from children who were breaking in the same shape she once broke. When the boys finally grew tired, Sophie cleaned the table and helped them return the room to normal before dinner. They hugged her before running upstairs. Will you help us tomorrow? Ethan asked. If you want me to, she replied. We want you to, Nathan said. Only you understand. Sophie watched them disappear up the stairs. She stood alone in the sunroom, wiping her hands on her apron. Her chest felt full of something new, hope mixed with fear. That night, she lay awake in her small room above the garage. The room was quiet, but her thoughts were loud. She stared at the ceiling and asked herself over and over, what am I doing? Will Robert be angry? Will he fire me? Will the boys be hurt if I am gone? She pressed her hand to her chest. Her heart beat slow, unsure. God, she whispered. If this is where you want me, please show me. A tear slid down her cheek, but before she could wipe it away, the sound of a car pulled into the driveway. She froze. The boys had told her their dad was supposed to return the next day, but the engine outside said something different. Robert Wilson was home early, and everything was about to change. And, Revonner, to the coming. Robert Wilson pushed open the front door with his travel bag still in his hand. He looked tired from the long flight, his shirt wrinkled, his eyes dark from lack of sleep. He only wanted silence. He only wanted rest, but instead of a quiet house, he heard laughter. Soft laughter. Children's laughter. He froze. He had not heard Ethan and Nathan laugh like that in a very long time. Slowly, he followed the sound down the hallway toward the sunroom. His heart beat in a slow, confused way. Not fast, but heavy. Like something inside him was waking up after a long sleep. The closer he got, the clearer the voices became. Nathan's voice reading out loud. Ethan giggling. Another voice. Sophie's voice. Encouraging them. Robert stood at the doorway and pushed the door open just a little. What he saw made him stop breathing. Ethan was sitting at the coffee table with a baking sheet full of white shaving cream. He was tracing the word believe with his small finger. His face shone with a pride Robert had not seen since Vanessa was alive. Nathan walked slowly around the couch with a blue overlay in one hand and a book in the other. He read each line without shaking or stumbling. His voice sounded strong, clear, and sure. Sophie sat between them, smiling softly, her eyes gentle. There were colored sheets on the table, letter cards, a small speaker playing a calm audio lesson. The room looked messy, but in a warm way. A learning way. Robert stood still. He did not know what he was looking at. He had paid many tutors. He had sent them to the best school in Texas. He had begged teachers to help, but nothing helped. Nothing changed. Yet here, in his own house, his sons were learning, laughing, growing, because of a maid. His voice came out sharper than he meant. "What is this?" The room went dead silent. Nathan stopped walking. Ethan froze with shaving cream on his fingers. Sophie stood so fast her chair almost fell. "Mr. Wilson," she said quietly. I can explain." Robert stepped inside the room, eyes moving slowly over each item overlays, textured letters, audiobooks, little cards with words written in thick ink. His gaze landed on Ethan's word, believe. He swallowed. "I hired you to clean," he said, his voice calm but painful. Not to, Dad," Ethan said suddenly, holding up the tray with shaking hands. "Look." Robert looked. Ethan had written the word perfectly, slowly, carefully, with the same letters he used to fear. "I spelled it right," Ethan said. "I never spell it right." Nathan stepped forward. "I read 12 pages today, without stopping. 12 pages. Robert's hand tightened around his briefcase. His throat burned. He looked at their faces. Faces he knew, but did not truly understand until this moment. They were not lazy. They were not slow. They were fighting their own mind every day while the world blamed them. And Sophie. She had seen what he did not. Sophie's voice trembled. "I'm sorry, Mr. Wilson. I should have told you. But I saw something in them. I recognized the signs. The letters moving. The trouble sitting still. The shame they carry. I know that shame. I lived with it." The twins looked at her with trust so strong it almost hurt to see. Robert took a long breath. "Sophie, come to my office." His voice was not angry, but it was heavy, too heavy. Sophie's heart dropped. Nathan grabbed her arm. "Please don't take her away," he begged. "Dad, please." Ethan's voice cracked. "She's the only one who sees us." Robert looked at his children, really looked, and something inside him cracked open. "I'm not taking her away," he said quietly. "Not yet." He turned and walked out of the sunroom. Sophie followed him slowly, her hands shaking. The long hallway felt like a walk to her own ending. Inside the office, Robert closed the door gently. He did not sit behind the desk like a boss. He walked to the window and stood with his hands pressed against the glass, breathing slowly. "Tell me," he said without turning. "Tell me exactly what you saw in my boys." Sophie sat carefully, her eyes lowered. "They have signs of dyslexia and signs of ADHD. They learn differently. Their brain needs color, movement, sound, touch, not force." She told him everything, how she learned to read at age 23, how the letters once danced for her the same way they danced for Ethan. She told him how she used shaving cream, overlays, and movement to teach herself. When she finished, the room felt like a church, quiet, sacred, full of truth. Robert finally turned. His eyes looked different, softer, broken, healing. "You saw something in them I did not," he said. "You saw something their teachers did not. You saw something their mother saw." He opened his laptop and turned the screen towards Sophie. Security footage played. Footage of the sunroom. Footage of Ethan reading with the green overlay. Footage of Nathan walking in circles while reading. Footage of both boys smiling, real smiles he had not seen since Vanessa died. Robert covered his face with his hand. His shoulders shook once, then again. I thought pushing them harder would fix it, he whispered. I thought if I hired better tutors, bought better books, forced discipline, they would get better. But I was pushing them into the very pain their mother tried to warn me about. He lowered his hand. They are not broken, Sophie said gently. Their brain just needs a different door to enter the room. Robert breathed a shaky breath. I need to do something. I need to understand. Teach me how to see them the way you do. Sophie's eyes widened. Sir, I am not a teacher. You taught my sons more in 2 weeks than anyone has in 2 years. He stepped closer, voice steady. I am not firing you, Sophie. I'm asking you to stay. I'm asking you to help me help them. Sophie covered her mouth with her hand. A tear fell. I will, she whispered. If you want me to. I do, Robert said. More than you know. Later that night, the boys rushed into the office, worried and scared. Robert opened his arms, and they ran to him. He held them both tight, something he had not done in a long time. I'm sorry, he whispered into their hair. I'm sorry for not seeing you, but I see you now. Nathan's small voice trembled. Are you angry at Sophie? No, Robert said. I'm thankful for her. Ethan hugged Sophie's waist. Can she stay forever? Sophie knelt and held both boys close. She did not trust her voice, so she only nodded, and for the first time in a long time, that house felt like a home again. It was not the end. It was the beginning of everything. The beginning of hope. The beginning of healing. The beginning of Robert seeing the truth about his sons. And Sophie learning she had a purpose far bigger than she ever imagined. Dear viewers, this story teaches us something deep. Some children are not failing. They are only waiting for the right person to see them. Ethan and Nathan were never broken. They only needed someone who understood their world. And Sophie, the maid everyone ignored, became the light they needed. Sometimes help comes from the person we expect the least. Sometimes God puts the right person in the right place at the right time. And sometimes, a small act of care can change a whole family. If you learned something from this story, please like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs hope today. Tell us in the comments where you are watching from and what lesson you learned. And if you want more emotional stories like this, comment more stories and you will be the first to receive the next one. Before you go, answer these 3 questions in the comments. 1. Do you believe every child learns in a different way? 2. Was Sophie right to help the twins even though she was the maid? 3. What part of this story touched your heart the most? Thank you for watching.